portion of this podcast, we wanted to talk about, Eternals. And everybody's like, what the hell is Eternals? Everybody, the trailer came out, got a few million views, was trending. Everybody's like, what's Eternals?
I think you got 77 million in total.
That's a few. That's a few million. And so everybody's trying to figure out what is Eternals. And so this short little part of the podcast, we're just going to talk about, who they are, what they are, like, and what their significance in the galaxy and the Marvel universe is.
To start off, I'm going to tell you, the Eternals showing up in the MCU is major because it's immediately a setup for mutants and X-Men down the road. And I'll explain it in a second. But
yeah,
the Eternals were created by the Celestials. Now, the Celestials we've already seen in the Marvel universe, in the MCU, in the movie, the movies everyone loves to go watch. They're those giant beings who are really all over the world, all over the universe. We saw them in the first Guardians of the Galaxy movie wielding the Power Stone, and then we saw a dead one, the severed head of one, in Guardians 1 and it was in Guardians of the Galaxy 2. In Guardians of the Galaxy 1, we saw it there. It's that severed head where that city is in that they travel to, where they find out about the Power Stone. And then we also saw that place again in Infinity War.
Which was Nowhere, right?
Yes, yeah. Nowhere, spelled Knowhere. Celestials are known for going around and messing with genes of races from different planets and all that stuff, and doing these things, and basically judging a race.
And basically creating their own.
They would create their own, and they would judge them, and then depending on if the inhabitants of a planet met their requirements, they would either let them live or they would kill them off in the comics. So the Eternals were created by the Celestials, and when the Celestials created the Eternals, who were meant to be protectors of Earth, they also created the Deviants, who were like the counterpart. Best way to think of them are like monsters, ghouls, and goblins.
And one person that we all know who's not a deviant, but he has a deviant gene, is Thanos.
Thanos is an Eternal with a deviant gene. You actually saw his cousin Thena in the trailer, and in the comics, his brother, Star Fox, is an Eternal, and I think he's even been on their team at one point. But to get back to where I was saying about the origins of the Eternals and humans and deviants, when the Celestials made the Eternals and deviants and humans, they gave a subset of humans this genes that would later down the line within generations manifest itself into the X gene, which is where mutants come from. So that's why Eternals being here in the MCU is important in general, because it literally sets up, it's like the most simplest way to set up the X-Men without having to set up any of the X-Men.
Exactly. Obviously, what they're trying to do now with Marvel is they're trying to cater to a lot of people that don't read the comics. And obviously you have the old X-Men movies, but
they've been doing that since they started, because they didn't have any of their S-tier characters, because they had to sell them off.
At the time when they were broke, yeah. And so basically a lot of, there's old X-Men movies which you can watch, but it doesn't really give you too much insight into, how'd they start?
No, they literally
they never go over it.
They just say mutants have been around for years.
Exactly. And that's why, Logan happened, where he goes back in time, and then, a whole new timeline is basically created, because now we saw that, they started making these new X-Men movies because now they can start over with younger casts and everything. And then with the Eternals, now we're basically gonna start heading towards the backstory of X-Men, and like you said, the X gene.
I personally, I've seen stuff that hints at that kid in the trailer is supposed to be important to the story. Apparently, he understands different languages, and if that's the case, he might actually be I don't know if this is true or not. I would love for it to happen, but he might be the child version of Apocalypse, who is known as the first mutant, even though I don't think he technically is. I think there have been a couple that came before him.
Wasn't Apocalypse in that he was played
terrible movie?
He was played by what's his face?
Oscar Isaac.
Yeah.
Who is now Moon Knight. So that's how you know those X-Men movies are not canon to the big Marvel movies everyone likes to go watch.
Yeah. What about, so even the new ones they made, they're not canon?
And I don't think you're going to see any X-Men movie until after 2025. Because they have the next, I know for a fact, I'm pretty sure I know their movies up to 2023. I know they've got 2024 mapped out pretty well as well. And honestly, you probably won't get an Avengers movie until 2025, and then another Avengers movie until 2025, and then that's when X-Men would be introduced.
Yeah.
And after that, which is a long time, but it is what it is.
So basically, the Eternals are, to put it into comparison, how would you compare them to the Avengers? Stronger.
Oh my God, yeah.
They're definitely like 20 times stronger than the Avengers. Like,
They are godlike beings.
they could destroy the entire Avengers in a second.
Yeah.
So
I'm just mad these dudes were not around at all during Endgame. They gotta explain that really well for me to not get annoyed.
well, I think I understand it because they have to, again, a lot of people do not read the comics. If everyone read the comics,
They're pretty
they
absent in the comics.
they would literally, I mean, yes, they don't have as many comics, but I think what they're trying to do is bring them into the limelight and like say like, hey, there's these powerful motherfuckers in this universe, okay?
Right.
Like they can do some shit. And I think if they had brought him out in Endgame, they would have just fucking murdered Thanos in like half a second and be like, all right, guys, we're going to another planet, and then
I don't know if they would have. It would have been. I think because he is extremely strong, especially for an Eternal, if I remember correctly. But it would have been a more fair fight.
Yeah.
You wouldn't have had like the scenes like of Cap being there by himself struggling, and then the whole team, the portal scene. That would have been very different. The Captain Marvel's entrance would have been greatly diminished by their entrance. That's for sure. So they have some stuff called the Unimind, which makes them they're just wild. They're extremely powerful for no reason.
All right, so if you guys want to see an in-depth review, and if you guys want to see an in-depth review of who the characters are, what their powers are, where they come from, what their origin stories, then smash that like button, get us to 10,000 likes, and we'll go ahead and do an in-depth overview of the Eternals. See you guys next time.